Okay, so I'm here with my lovely co-host Sky, who's also a recent college graduate. She graduated from Villanova University, and she majored in communications and PR.
Yeah, communications with a public relations and advertising specialization, and a minor in business.
Yep, and she's currently working at Paramount. So lovely ladies in business. So I feel like a good place to start would be our origin story. So like I said earlier, we met when we were 12 years old. We met in the 7th grade, and we were going to an all-girls Catholic school, which was not a predominantly black institution. It was relatively diverse. I feel like it was some people are used, but we were definitely still in a minority group, and it definitely reflected in some of our experiences. We did notice like certain levels of discrimination and not being treated the same as our peers, and always being like perceived in a certain like different connotation.
Yeah, especially when it came to any type of conflict that we had with administrators or teachers.
For sure, and that's something that was definitely interesting about the experience, because a lot of people, when they talk about like difficulties that they had in their schools, their high schools and things like that, it was usually pertaining to their peers and other students. But a lot of our pushback and resistance came from administration and our teachers, the people who we and our families entrusted to educate and uplift us, whereas that ultimately was not always the case. There's many instances where we're in class simply trying to further our education, because it's something that's characteristic of people who are educated. We ask a lot of questions, so we're curious, but we were often regarded as being like antagonistic. They saw us as challenging them and just being difficult, and always it seemed as though they felt like their authority was being challenged, which I feel like should never be a thing when you're the teacher. You're commanding the room. So how do you feel like that reflected? Because I was saying how it was like our school was kind of like a micro environment that reflected themes of the greater environment at large. So I know you could tell us more about systemic oppression of Black women and also like parallels between that.
So yeah, I definitely think, especially when it comes to the stereotype of like kind of Black women being angry or like hostile and aggressive, I definitely think teachers in that school had that view, because specifically our religion teacher, where a lot of like conflict came from within the classroom, and also that went above to having administrators get involved, was with our teacher, who
she was terminated later eventually.
Yeah,
but it was, interestingly enough, nothing to do with how she was treating us. There were instances of like us being referred to as those people, with her specifically like talking to our friends and trying to turn them against us.
Specifically targeting me and you by name, telling people, oh, you shouldn't be friends with those girls. I know you're not like those girls. You're not like them,
And it's just so ridiculous, because I feel like part of what put a target on our backs is that we are vocal and that we are confident, that we have strong foundations beneath us that don't allow us to just be passive and like go with the flow when the flow is correct.
What's being told to us, like, and that's supposed to be what a classroom is. Like, you're supposed to encourage debate in a classroom, because debate furthers understanding, and I feel like it makes it more engaging for the whole class to pay attention.
Exactly, because nobody wants to just have somebody barking random words at them. We want to be engaged and deeply involved in our education, because that is our nature. So one of the things that we were discussing were like the challenges that come at existing at the intersection of not only being a woman but also being a Black person. Everything you do is going to come under excess scrutiny, whereas certain people would be boosted up and said, yes, you go girl, for being vocal, for being loud, and being expressive. Black women are oftentimes encouraged to lower their voices, make themselves smaller to fit in and go unnoticed. And we're not in that type of place anymore. We're in an increasingly expansive world where people are becoming more aware of their inner worth, their own inherent value, and the equality of all people, and that should be reflected in our environment.
Yeah, I think that's something very important to remember as you not only navigate your way through all these institutions, but in the world at large, you are going to face disproportionately high inequities and racial biases, but also even gender biases, and just stereotypes, and we're going to have to work twice, if not more than that, harder than the average person, because we live in a world that celebrates white mediocrity. So you have to constantly remind yourself of your worth and your talents and your competencies, and surround yourself with people who are also going to affirm you in all of those things, because you can easily lose sight of that, seeing everyone else kind of get praised or chosen over you time and time again, and it's very disparaging. So if you don't keep, your inherent beliefs at the forefront, you can really lose sight of yourself.
Yeah, and I feel like that brings me to a very important point, is self-validation. I feel like that's the most critical skill as a Black woman, as a woman in general, as a human in the universe. Being self-validated is very important, because while we're in more expansive, more open-minded and accepting environments now, as we've gotten and kind of chosen the, pockets of society that we choose to occupy, the spaces that we like to take up. But there were times in the past where it's like the feedback that we were receiving, like the response from our environment that we were receiving, was definitely incongruent of somebody who was hardworking, equally deserving, equally beautiful, and just a person. You are treated as though you're not a fully fleshed out person with your own feelings, and that community is important, and also just knowing your worth, because sometimes your environment won't reflect that back to you, but you have to be self-assured enough that you can be able to ground yourself in knowing your true worth. So another thing that we were discussing was in the media, and honestly, sometimes your immediate environment, is the policing of Black women's bodies, and also the standards that we're compared up against. Yeah. One point that I always like to raise that I find so interesting is that standards exist for people. Humans are the most infinitely diverse and different creatures from each other. Even twins don't have the same fingerprints. So why is a standard being instituted on how we should look? A lot of people who are very big in the media, a lot of people who are influential to beauty trends are all the same look. They all have the same look. Exactly. They all have the same look, which is not what you find in reality. And oftentimes these are white women or people who have a Eurocentric beauty to them. So because the closer you are in proximity to whiteness, the more you're viewed as beautiful. And it's really sad, because especially with it being reinforced in media and in mainstream media in our culture, white Eurocentric beauty standards are these standards, which Black natural features can be the antithesis of that. So it's kind of trying to be confident, trying to feel worthy in a world that's telling you you're not beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, and it's really awful, because there is no correct way to be as an individual. I feel like the way that you came out is the way that you're meant to be. And I feel like one person who really enforced this in my life is my mother. My mother is the most confident woman I know. And one thing I noticed, she doesn't always have the popular opinion of what's hot and what's not. She's very self-led, and I've noticed that usually her metrics of beauty is what looks closest to her, and that I didn't become conscious of that until maybe a year or two ago, when I was in a class and we were discussing just cultural diversity and how it impacts confidence. And once I became cognizant of that, I kind of like more consciously adapted that. And it's so interesting to compare like from when I was like a young teenager who I found super beautiful to who I find super beautiful now. It's been a huge change, but I think it's been for the better because it's been more in the direction of what's attainable for me. Confidence doesn't mean being in denial about where you can be better or what things you would like to look different and which areas you'd like to strive towards. But what I think is very important is that you're driving that. A lot of people are experiencing like endless striving and desire to be different than they are, and it's not coming from inside.
Yeah.
It's coming from outside. It's almost like everybody's caving in to external pressure being put on them.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, external validation, you'll always constantly look, like, when you, rephrase, when you are fueled and, like, your ultimate goal is to receive external validation, you will constantly be striving to, like, be better. And it's like, because beauty standards and like just all standards in general, they're human constructs, so they're constantly changing. You'll never feel satisfied with how you are. So I think that's a very good point to like have your standard of beauty be like, you should be at the center of your standard of beauty. Your standard of anything, honestly.
And train of thought, please come back. It had to do with, I just wanted to like sum it up, like what she's saying is like basically trying to look better according to today's standards is trying to reach the horizon. It's trying to grab a cloud, you know, because it's not real. And if it's something that you keep striving towards, you will just keep finding more unhappiness on the other side of your striving.
Yeah, because you see that a lot with people. Like, we were discussing a TikToker recently who has a major, like, change in appearance. And even just analyzing that person, and also for me looking at my own, or reflecting on my own, like, changes, even over the years, chasing after a standard, you'll find that you're not always, like, it's not always cracked up.
The grass isn't always greener.
Yeah.
Because it's like in real time, she's having like a mental breakdown on her public profiles. And I was saying that I feel like that came from like she was tying all of her pain and all the things she didn't like about herself to her physical appearance. And she thought that when that changed, everything would be better. Yeah. But after having that dramatic change, and maybe not even being happy at how it looks, she's just crashing out because the grass wasn't greener on the other side.
She was too worried about how like other people would then perceive and treat her, and I think neglected how she perceives and treats herself.
Absolutely. Because I really am a believer that everybody's love language for themselves is action. So, like acts of kindness. Treat yourself with kindness. Treat your body with kindness. Treat yourself as queen or king for the men here. And just always do your best to treat yourself the way you would treat a partner who you're head over heels in love with, you know. So, while I know everybody's bodies are different, things just are not the same, in this like Ozempic world, in this get a BBL world, I feel like that's where people understanding that concept of action being your love language would definitely, can we speak louder? Okay. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Okay. So instead of putting your body through harsh medications that most people are not educated even on the side effects of, instead of going through one of the most dangerous cosmetic surgeries because Kim Kardashian did it or some girl with 1 million followers did it, maybe dedicate yourself to going to the gym daily. If you don't have a gym membership, dedicate yourself to going out in nature daily. Because in addition to like how that can change your physical appearance to something you might want it to be, it also has many mental health benefits moving around. I really am a believer that to move is to live. To be active is being. A lot of us are kind of being moved into, I don't know, a metaphorical death because we tend to be stuck at our computers. We tend to be on our phone. It's even like a collective joke about bedrock rolling on TikToks for hours. And while I totally do have those days because those apps they're effective. They keep my attention. It's not something that we should ever normalize, because that's not what we have all these amazing like human faculties for. We're meant to be active and to go out and live as a person, live as a free person. So, would you like to talk about the cycles?
Yes.
For sure.
One second, because when we were discussing what we were going to talk about today, and you told me that the topic was confidence, and specifically confidence for Black women, it reminded me of this book that I read. It's called Listening to God, and the author is Renita J. Weems. And in this book, even though she's talking about the soul's journey, she uses an analogy to compare it to the seasons. And she says the journey of the soul unfolds in a continual cycle, much like the seasons of nature. Spring brings a renewal of growth and energy. Summer is a time of strength and confidence. And in fall, we are ablaze with insight. And then comes winter, the season of myriad agonies. And it relates to, how people will experience periods of dullness, uncertainty, and despondency during their spiritual journeys. But I also think it relates to self-love and our journey of, confidence too, because all journeys are cyclical. And like I said, even though I feel like about 3 years ago was the most pivotal moment of like my self-love journey, and I think that's when I radically started to love and accept myself. There are times when I still have low points, and sometimes those low points seem like they're forever. But reading what she said, I always keep that in the back of my head, where I constantly remind myself, even though you're not where you're at right now, you're going to be where you're at again, and you won't even surpass what was once your peak, because it's a cycle. It's not a linear journey. And I also think, from the trials and tribulations we experience during these like winters, we come out of them stronger and wiser people. So next time, you may face another challenge, you'll be better equipped to handle that challenge and to kind of bounce back to yourself. And you just kind of always have to remember to do the work, validate yourself, and surround yourself with people who are very affirming. Your community. I think it's so important to have a community of specifically Black women around. I'm very blessed because my family, I feel like the largest presence in my family are Black women. The people, there's literally more women in my family in my close family than there are men. And so it's very empowering to see strong, beautiful, supportive, Black women, and to lean on them for emotional support when you are having these times of low confidence or low self-esteem and low self-concept, because your people, your tribe, they'll remind you of who you are. And I feel like also you do that for me a lot. When I'm having moments and I'm I'm forgetting who I am. Yeah, you are always quick to remind me.
Yeah, because there's sometimes you have to let your friends rock and just feel what they're feeling, but sometimes I'm like, girl, snap out of it. Remember who you are. And I feel like it's so important to have that affirmation in your environment. And also, her talking about the cycles made me want to bring up the concept of self-efficacy. So self-efficacy is basically just the understanding that I was able to do something one time, I'm able to do it again. You build self-efficacy by taking risks, carrying out challenges. If you fall, just try again. One time you will get it. And when you get it that one time, this is a tool put into your tool belt. This is a skill that nobody can take from you. And I feel like it definitely is kind of a mental skill to remember yourself with constancy. Because in moments when you're feeling bad, people are always like, oh, it's just an emotion, it's just a feeling, don't be so rude by your feelings. But feelings are truthfully one of the most engaging human experiences. I feel like emotions is what makes life feel real. So it's not to be dismissive of an individual's pain in a time where they're feeling insecure, when they're feeling scared, lost, confused, in doubt. That is real. You really feel it. But the skill comes in recognizing that while I might feel really, really bad right now, I have felt good before, and I trust myself, and I've built that relationship with myself that I know in time I will feel good again. And it's not because I'm going to wait for something outside myself to change. It's because I am going to put in that work, show myself that love to get myself back to where I was before.
Be your own hero.
Definitely be your own hero. So next I would just like to talk about owning your own voice. I had touched on it lightly about how oftentimes you might, as a Black woman, feel the tendency to silence yourself because you don't want to be the loud, crazy, attention-seeking person in the room that some people might take you for literally, talking like 1 decibel higher. But how this ties in spiritually, your voice is kind of governed by your throat chakra. And the throat chakra is also one that rules confidence. So in allowing people to silence you, allowing people to make you talk less, allowing people to feel like you don't have the right to express yourself, that's giving people spiritual power over you and your confidence, your authority to be you, your authority to express you. I feel like it's very fitting that the network that I'm talking in is Grown Folks Talking, Express Yourself, because this is how you build strength on an individual and a community scale. Don't let your chakra that allows you to be understood and also understand be stifled because other people in the room are made uncomfortable by it,
Yeah. I definitely think going back to, like, our experience of high school / junior high together, definitely that was an environment where I exercised, like, self-advocacy the most. Because
nobody was going to do it for us.
Exactly. Not the teachers or, the adults who you're supposed to trust, to have your best interests in mind and to advocate for you, we had to be that for ourselves. So I think, especially in, like, how would you describe that environment? Like a kind of a formal environment. Like, I think that equipped me to be able to advocate for myself in, like, similar areas. Even, like, back to school, but, like, you can take the skills that we learned there and apply them even when you, like, in your workplace.
Definitely. Self-advocacy is definitely a good skill to have under your belt, because a lot of times we have expectations of other people to be how we would be, So you definitely get, like, the rude awakening.
Everybody's not like you.
For sure.
People like you.
People are not always like you, and so while you're in a situation where you're like, I would definitely speak up for this person, I would do everything in my power to make a way for this person, not everybody feels that way. And a lot of people, even if it's like the slightest consequence that they might face, any risk is sometimes too much risk for somebody to put themselves out there on your behalf. So you always have to be willing to, take that jump and fight for yourself. I feel like it's very admirable to be communal and speak when other people feel like they don't have the voice to, but it's not something you can expect. It's something that's a pleasant surprise, but you always have to be equipped to advocate for yourself. So that kind of plays into my next point, and this applies in many regards of life, but for trauma in general, anytime where you felt small or felt like the situation was unfair to you, change the story you tell yourself. Because here's the thing. We all know that institutional racism is real. We all know that there's many oppressive forces that are working against minority groups. However, you can maintain awareness of that being the reality without telling yourself a story of you identifying as a senseless victim. Just because people are attempting to victimize me does not mean that I will be a victim. I can acknowledge that there are forces against me, but I give greater acknowledgement to the power that I hold within myself. I feel like we're self-determined individuals, we're self-determined beings. Because of that little spark of God's consciousness that lives in us, we have a say-so in our destiny. And I feel like, honestly, knowing that gives me more affirmation, because I understand that people attempting to make you feel small, people talking poorly about you, people trying to reduce your self-esteem, these are people who feel bad themselves.
Projecting it onto you.
Misery loves company. So those people who are being unkind for us, they're still miserable. But we didn't accept the story that we're being treated poorly because we deserve it or because we're less worthy. We understood these are people who are hurting. These are people who are hurting. I have empathy for them, but I still hold them accountable. Mm-hmm. And I understand that how they treated me doesn't reflect anything about myself. All that I can control in that situation is my response to the situation. So I choose to look at it as in reality as I can, and also in a spiritual sense that a lot of the time when people are existing with great pain to the extent that they take it out on others, it's kind of being in a state of spiritual death. So this person who's not spiritually attuned, this person who is not necessarily connected to their God's consciousness that lives in them, they don't have greater governance in my reality than I do. And they definitely don't have greater governance than God does. So I accept the story that while you might have material power, while you might know somebody who could tell somebody to do this, this, and this, I'm divinely protected. Mm-hmm. And God's divine providence will always reign stronger than anybody's misery, anybody's hatefulness.
Mm-hmm. Anything in the material world. That's what you said. It kind of reminded me of like something else that I think is important when trying to develop and also keep a hold of the confidence that you have, is that anytime you are rejected mm-hmm. in whatever sense, don't take that as a lack, something you lack, a deficiency within you. Mm-hmm. Like, it has nothing to do with you, and that's something that I also try to like constantly remind myself, is that they're not saying like you're less than in these specific areas. Mm-hmm. It just means that sometimes, you're not aligned.
Yeah, because incompatibility does not mean inadequacy. Mm-hmm. Just because, I remember this was just like in regards to like people feeling like not desired by like the opposite gender or their gender of interest, is that like you could be the prettiest peach in the peach tree, but there will always be a person who doesn't like peaches. So it's like there's nothing wrong with you. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't compatible with you. And I also feel like as Black women, sometimes you do question like kind of like why. Because all I did was, be born and hang out. And I received so much hate for it, man, that there have been moments that it's like, sheesh, like, mm-hmm. why is it like this? And it's like, even from when I was little, I was recounting to her how when I was in 4th grade, I had a teacher who did not like me. It's this lady who's like 30 years old. And she was always so mean to me and like have arguments with me. And it's just, at 23 now, please put me in the psych ward if you catch me arguing with a 9-year-old child. Because it's just like, at the time, I'm just like so hurt, like literally why? I'm glad I have a mom to defend me though. But it's even looking back, I still feel that sadness. But another thing that I learned is suffering is just pain without meaning. Because when you're just hurting and you don't have any understanding of it, you don't understand what trajectory it could be placing you on, mm-hmm. that's what suffering is. But when you apply context to pain, it's meaning. It has direction, and it honestly gives you momentum. People think that feeling negative emotions is just bad and you should always try to avoid it. But pain is a catalyst. Pain is an energy source. It's like slow-moving, it's heavy, and it's hard energy, but energy is energy nonetheless. And I consider myself to be an alchemist, so I always do my best to transform good and bad into more good and more greatness. Yeah. Because you always have to understand that, like I said, godless forces will never trump you. So they could have a little temporary power over your ego, mm-hmm. over your personal identity, but the limitless part of you will always go unscathed when you just tune in to the inner love. Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, because that kind of reminds me of toxic positivity. And just how it's very unrealistic to think that you're always going to feel great and on top of the world 24/7. Mm-hmm. Like, no person can do that. And it's important, like when you do have those low points, lean into it, and like you said, don't let it be meaningless. Learn from it. Dive deeper, and that's the thing. Like when you're going through something, always try to dive and find out what is the root of issue of whatever it is that you're going through. So then, once you truly understand the problem, like at its origin, that's when you come out of it wiser.
For sure, for sure. Okay, so we've talked enough about mean and cruel everybody else. So now we're going to talk about like what it takes to be confident, how to build confidence. So would you like to start us off, or would you want me to go?
I can make a point or two.
Okay.
So how to build confidence? I think that's kind of a hard-loaded question, but
because there's so many levels to it.
I would say how you said that suffering can be a catalyst for change. I think that was definitely my catalyst for like change, and that the most, as I referred to before, like 3 years ago when I really made like the most impact in my self-love journey was after going through like just a series of treacherous circumstances. And I really had to learn how to affirm myself. Words of affirmation became a big one for me, and even probably journaling. I dibble and dabble in some journaling.
Always so good to have a cute little journal. Like, look at this. This is so nice. For people who are not videoed in, I have like this little Van Gogh notebook. I love journaling. That's as much as I go.
And I think also because that's when I also started getting into crystals. And so I had my carnelian and my rose quartz, and I was like, okay, I believe that even just wearing this, because after, you know, kind of cleansing them and like back to like
imbuing with intention.
I felt like wearing this is not only going to make me give love, but it's also going to make me receive love, and like anything else that I'm trying to attract. And so, yeah.
For sure. And since you brought up crystals, crystals for confidence, always keep your blue crystals close, because the blue crystals are the ones that are good for the throat chakra. They're good for communication, and communication is self-expression. So get you some sodalite, get you some lapis lazuli, amazonite. I really love blue obsidian, and I wanted to have it, but I think I left it in Jersey because I couldn't find it in my bag. I was like, gosh darn it. But it's really beautiful because obsidian is a good like strengthening crystal, like the traditional like black obsidian. It's very good for getting rid of negative energy and also grounding you. But the blue version of it is more like targeted towards that self-expressive trait, and kind of has that water element feel to it that helps you to be dynamic and flowing and open to change, but still maintaining like solid form, you know. So
and also mirror work. I don't know if it's like we both are Leo moons for anybody who's into astrology. So Leo is very like confident, and a lot of people joke that like a Leo like as soon as they walk into a room because they just seem so like into themselves. But like even just looking at myself in the mirror, saying those affirmations, dressing like how I wanted to dressing how I want to feel, because I am a firm believer in like look good, feel great. And so I present myself like how I want to in the world in a way that I think makes me feel most beautiful. And I think that also helps me like psychologically. You don't realize that you are walking in the world with more confidence when you feel like you look good. So
definitely
that helps.
Enjoying yourself like the queens and kings that you are. So another thing, I feel like we did talk about it, but just for recap, I think it's one of the big takeaways. An important thing for having confidence is understanding your context, because in high school and like even before that, I never went to like any predominantly black institution. And as a result, while I wasn't like the most into like having crushes and like dating and stuff like that, I was taking those side notes that there was like everybody around me receiving that external, like, attention from, like, boys wanting to talk to them and, like, you know, maybe, like, do romance with them or whatever. But I didn't receive as much. And it was interesting because it seemed incongruent with how I felt about myself. But subtly, it did start to, because, you know, the brain doesn't like cognitive dissonance. When, like, the reality isn't reflecting what you think it should be, either the reality will change or your thinking will change. And unfortunately, I feel like there were points where externally I wasn't getting the same attention as, like, my peers of other colors. And I started to unconsciously think maybe I am less attractive than I am. But my home life, I'm very reaffirmed and reassured at home that I was like, I don't think I'm crazy. I don't think my family's crazy. I think I'm just different than my environment. So understanding your context. You're not undesirable. There might just be an incompatibility with not only, like, your race or, like, your sex and gender, but also just with these people's, like, mental schema, you know?
Yeah.
Like how people perceive certain groups. There are certain people who, they might be attracted to a certain group, but they know if they tell their parents, they might get disowned. So while they might not see you as less than, they understand within themselves that this isn't something I could pursue. So a lot of times that things that we might internalize and blame ourselves for, it's just what's going on in the people around us' life. It's not always about us.
Definitely, that's something important to remember if you are in any predominantly white spaces and going to a PWI college. Like, thankfully, I was able to find, like, community with other Black women there, where we would often, like, have the same experience of, like, feeling like, what is up? Like, it can be us, like because we're beautiful. Like, I can see you're beautiful. You can see that I'm beautiful. But, like,
good character on top of that.
Yes, but still feeling like we're not being chosen compared to, or even preferred compared to, like, our white counterparts, who they can be beautiful, they can be smart, they can be funny and talented, but, like, not in a way that's more,
like, substantially
than us. So it's nice again to have that community, like you said, you have with your family, same with me, but also with friends to remind you guys of, like, who you are and affirm each other.
Absolutely. And just to go off of that, I also went to a predominantly white college, but I still was lucky enough to have found, like, community that affirms me. So there might be people listening in who are in settings where they don't have access to, like, that strong Black female backing or just people who look like you to give you support. But I think it is important to also note that you can find that in other groups. Two of my closest friends that I made in college were two beautiful white girls, and they're high vibrational people. So the thing is, while we got different, like, human suits on, we have similar souls. So having that openness still, in spite of probably being burnt in the past, is so important because, you know, when you're resistant, you block out the good and the bad. So always move with an open heart and let your heart draw in your circle, because they definitely are people who were there for me to, like, great levels, reaffirm me that I'm so beautiful physically, internally. They tell me I'm funny, they tell me I'm smart, and they also tell me when I'm falling short, and they tell me when I'm wrong. So it's just so important to have people who are real, people who resonate with your heart.
I feel like we're both really lucky in that sense because we have a very, like, strong support system with our friend group from home, but also, like, we both were able to make great communities, like, when we went away from home and have, like, find people who were very similar to us, like, in their beliefs and their thinking and, like, personalities, and who are honestly just great support systems.
Another important thing about self-expression, because I don't think I would have been able to attract these people by being quiet, closed off, and cornered. Like, I'm a big believer in that, like, we're all kind of, like, I don't know what those are called, like, the radio poles. Like, we're constantly putting out vibration. Sometimes it's a quiet energy that you radiate, But sometimes it's you speaking your voice. It's you being you, loud and proud, but still with regard for your environment. Don't do too much. But like when you're yourself authentically, you're bound to find people who align with you, reaffirm you, and will help you to grow in those ways. So moving on, already talked about it, but definitely still need to reinforce it. Fight for your validation. Win your own favor. Seek to impress you above anybody else. Seek to look beautiful for you before anybody else. Seek to be educated, to have power, to move with like regal and majestic energy for you. Because the reality is the only person you're stuck with 24/7 is you. So you better make it right with her or him, or you won't be able to with anybody else. You will never feel good in front of other people if you don't feel good with yourself first. So make sure that that's a priority.
Doesn't matter how much external validation you get. Like if you're not, if it all doesn't come from within, then it's going to be meaningless.
For sure. And again, create a strong network that reinforces you. And just remember that your value is inherent and it's infinite. It's there. It's just about you letting it in. It's not about going out and finding yourself and looking in all these places. It's about peeling the layers that made you forget who you were in the first place. Your self-worth is self-determined, so set it high. And any environment, any person, any place, anything that doesn't align with it, let it go. Because if it's not in alignment with you, you don't change yourself. You be you. You strive to be better in your own right, but you don't let anybody take anything from you.
So I think it also speaks to you talking about like being outspoken and like that attracting like not only the people but the experiences and the opportunities that align with you. So it's important to authentically be yourself at all times, because even if you know you're rejected by the institution, organization, the people that you thought you wanted to align yourself with, maybe those people just don't align with you, and you only want to like bring things into your life that are for your highest good.
And another thing that I forgot, and after this we're going to go to the Q&A if anybody has anything they want to share or ask, but one like huge milestone in like my like radical increase in confidence was shifting the source of my confidence from the things that were love-based to the things that I control. So not to be so Leo moon full of ourselves, but we're two pretty girls. We didn't do anything to be pretty. We kind of just came out that way. We're also both very intelligent. And while we did do our homework and we did study, a certain part of that is like hereditary. So it's like school came easy to us, and we're so grateful for it, and we're doing everything that we can with that. But still, base your self-confidence on things that you work for. So, for example, learning new skills, defining your character, just simply trying to actualize. You know, I had to throw that in there. Welcome to ACTUALYZR. So I feel like some things that I did was consciously be more kind, like go out of my way to do things for other people, not like to the extent that I'm like totally draining myself, but if I can do a kind deed for somebody, I will do it. And I feel like that really enabled me to create like such a sense of warmth and love for myself, showing that I'm a good person and that I go out of my way to be kind for people. Another thing, learn skills. Where I get this, guys. I like learned how to paint like 2 years ago. For the people who aren't viewing on camera, I'm sorry for you, but I'm showing them like a really epic self-portrait that I did. And that's something I'm really proud of because it took a lot of patience, took several hours of work. And
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay. How do I get on camera?
You called in, but you can't. But I'm still going, so mute yourself, please. So, it's very important that like you create skills and you intentionally grow. So in those moments where you're feeling maybe down on yourself or questioning yourself, reflect on not only the ways you naturally came out good, but on the ways that you went above and beyond for yourself to be even better. And fostering skills that help you to help your community, like fixing, like, say, for example, you're not the most communicative, do your best to make yourself uncomfortable sometimes and speak up on things that need to be spoken about. And just do your best to be better. And that's how you gain confidence. Mm-hmm. Because when you know that you've exhausted all efforts to be your best self, I don't know how you could not feel confident in yourself. Because it's the internal pursuits, the internal undertakings that I feel like really set people apart. Because the material realm, it's real, it's concrete. It's easy to put the two things together and get a third thing, Mm-hmm. But going within, addressing pain, addressing uncertainty, and facing the abstract, that's what I think makes a tough person. That's what makes a strong person that is confident, bold, and, ready to take on whatever life throws at them. Alrighty, so on that note, I would like to open up the floor for Q&A for people who called in. And if you're speaking and I can't hear you, hit *6 because that's how you unmute. I don't know if you all are muted. But, yeah, let them rip, guys. But what are your thoughts? How we like today's podcast? And also, if you ask a question, make sure you address who you're asking, whether you're asking Your Highness or you're asking Sky. And also, no swearing on the network, please.
You see?
Did somebody say something?
Can't get my swoop right, so I just wait.
I'm sorry, I can't understand you.
If it's a question.
I don't know what's going on here. Your Highness, are you talking to me?
I'm talking to whoever wants to speak. If you have a question or something, you can say it.
No, because you say you couldn't hear. Did somebody else say something?
It might have been you. I just heard a voice in the background, like talking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, being I just chimed in, I didn't catch too much of what you were saying. But I'm distracted me. Take it off again.
Say it again.
No, I was talking to Allison. She looks very nice, by the way. But
do you have a question or a comment?
I just caught the tail end of what you were saying, right? Put it on. I just caught the tail end of what you were saying, right? And you know what I just got out of that? Just that last little bit. It's like, don't even play any games. Just jump in the water.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's definitely something. And for those who don't know, this is my dad speaking. So that's definitely something you contributed to my life. And I know you definitely have seen me years on years on years. You telling me, hey, like, just go for it. And I'm like, my dad. But in time, in getting over the fears, you're right. So you get your eyes closed. You're definitely right. I'm good for pushing things off out of like fear of doing them. But as I listened to you more and took those leaps, it's been nothing but fruitful. So a big thank you in that regard. And I
don't believe too many things. I don't believe too many things are hereditary, but I think a little bit of that is hereditary. I.e., your grandmother. with pushing things off and not wanting to jump in the water.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you'll never know what goes on if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And even that cliche, you got one life to live. Like, I think it's kind of official.
Mm-hmm.
Not on the reckless side of things, but consciously, like you really have one life to live. So it doesn't make sense to stand on the sidelines and not get in the game,
Yeah, definitely. Don't be a passive character in your own life story. You have to be the one, like, taking the risks and really actively creating the reality that you want for yourself.
And I remember I read this quote before. I don't know what it was exactly, but it was like, procrastination is arrogance that God will give you another chance tomorrow. Yeah, let that one sink in, because that's heavy. And that's exactly what it is. We always delay things for our self that exists tomorrow, but the only self that we have any control of is the one that exists right now. Okay, so yeah. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Please give us some chat.
What's the basis of the show?
The basis of the show is on self-actualization in the areas of psychology, spirituality, and physical health. So I call the podcast ACTUALYZR because when I was studying psych, I saw Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is a triangle, and I gotta have the picture of it. Could you pull it up really quick? I'll show it on the computer. Mm-hmm. But the base of the pyramid is like survival needs. Yeah. The next one up is I don't know, like is it emotional needs or security needs?
Yeah, security. The physical stuff is at the bottom, then it's the emotional and social in the middle.
Mm-hmm. But long story short, at the top of that triangle, the hierarchy of needs, is self-actualization. When you secure your physical resources, when you get that community love, you ultimately bring yourself to a certain peak where you can just start doing your best to be your best in every regard. As compared to a video game, you're kind of maxing all your stats. That's what's
big and busy.
Okay. Anything else? If not, could you please mute?
Yeah. That was me again, Kay?
Yes.
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
And for people who have video, look, I'm showing you guys the triangle, the hierarchy of needs. So it starts at the bottom, like the physiological needs, which is like food, water, shelter. Then it's safety and security, so that's health, employment, property, family, and like social ability. Next one is love and belonging. Huh? Okay, I'm gonna have to just like mute the whole thing. Okay, so if anybody wants to unmute, hit *6. So the next one is love and belonging. So that's friendship, family, intimacy, and sense of connection. Then there's self-esteem. There's building that confidence, achievement, respect to others, and the need to be a unique individual. And self-actualization is when you get more into like those third eye and crown chakra things, like spiritual connection, having inner purpose, being creative, and trying to reach out your inner potential in all regards. Okay, so that's why I'm called ACTUALYZR, trying to get everybody actualized, including myself. So if anybody has any questions or comments, if not, we could wrap up.
Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Hey, my name is Michael. I love your show. I really, what you guys are saying is so true. I think the biggest problem people have is there's a lot of distraction out there in the world, and people get so caught up into it. For example, watching the news. Like, I don't like watching the news because there's too much negative stuff.
I agree.
Programs. People, I got to watch my program on TV. That's a distraction. Food can be a distraction. So I learned that I have to control these things. Mm-hmm. And just being aware of all these distractions that can go on in your life, that can really help you out. Even people can distract you. They have negative people out there. Mm-hmm. So I learned to, I have to kind of block them out in a way, and I have to think about me, making myself better, because there's a lot of distractions out there. Movies, and you have to say to yourself, well, I have to control my life and make it better. I can't let this distraction take over my life. I have friends I discover that are very distracted. And I'm like, wow, I'm going to have to live myself with them. So I tell people, I say, well, you have to look at all these distractions. You're not even aware of it sometimes. So I just want to thank you for, putting these things out so people can be aware that you need to retrain yourself. That's the only way you're going to get better. You know, and I realized that, you know, I'm like, you know, I gotta, you know, got these TV commercials that tell you to buy this, eat that, and people don't even realize it. They're controlling you, and you need to reprogram yourself. And it's once you, you know, look at it that way, then you start practicing it. It can really change your world around. You know, and other people can see it into you. You know, wow, you changed. I'm like, well, you know, but thank you so much, and you know, thank you for your show, and thank you for your guests.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I feel like you also made me think of something I forgot to mention. Accountability really is the key to freedom and in turn confidence. So definitely being aware of where you voluntarily put yourself in some of the situations that you hate. And also be mindful of who you choose to co-create your reality. Because some people are distractions. Some people do have different goals than you. So you always have to be mindful, and that's always self-love.
May I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Good afternoon, ladies. How are you?
Good. How are you? Oh.
Yes. Great. It's funny that you mentioned Laszlo hierarchy of needs. I think it was my psychology course in college that I learned about that, and it really stuck with me to now. So it's funny that you use that as the basis for your program. Excellent choice.
That's so awesome.
The self.
We're losing you a little bit right now.
So it helped me to understand people.
Because a little bit of a connectivity issue with you. You're breaking up right now.
First, do something.
Okay, Basil, you were having a little bit of a connection issue. You were breaking up. So,
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I don't know where I left off that you guys might have heard me, but I was talking about when I went to college and I took sociology. The sociology course was that was like a prerequisite. You had to take sociology, either psych or sociology. So I took sociology course, and what I learned is the Laszlo hierarchy of needs. And it's funny that you base your program on that because I think it's an excellent idea. It taught me how to actually deal with people. The first tier is called self-preservation. We have to do what we have to do to survive. You know what I mean? So when we hear terminologies like doggy dog or he's cutthroat, sometimes, you know, they do what they do, and that's innate because it's a survival mechanism. Not that it's good, but we all are taught that we must survive. And then the second tier is that I think we need love. After we survive and we're in our comfort zone, then we want to love. But before we do any of the loving, we have to know that we're going to survive first. And I think that's only natural. I mean, you want to know that you can survive before you start loving. Or if you meet a mate, you want to make sure he's able to, you know, have that survival mode as well. So that is an awesome, thing that you kind of parallel for your program. So I just wanted to say that was really good. You were talking about, I came in a little late and as the other guests too, but I'm glad you young people are out there doing your thing. It's good to have some young blood on the Grown Folks Talking Network. So I want you guys to continue, and kudos to your guests and yourself, and keep on keeping on.
All right, thank you so much. Okay. Any other takers? Going once. Going twice. Okay, so it's gone now. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for welcoming our lovely guest, Sky. Sky, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. And also thank you all for being such a great community and for allowing us to sit here and talk to you, like have one of our regular conversations. So, thank you guys.
For sure. Meeting our community needs, definitely. Because it wouldn't be easy to come out here and do this if, we didn't have a bunch of wide arms waiting to receive us. So thank you all. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Saturday, an even better Sunday, and an even better life. All right. So thank you guys so much. And also, we have the next show coming on at 2 p.m., so definitely tune in. You can come in the same way that you came into this one if you guys use the app, or you guys can call in on the call-in number that you used to get into this session. So thank you guys so much. Shout out to Girl Folks Talking Podcast Network, and I hope everybody has a lovely day. Bye-bye. Bye.